The Dice Tower is made possible by listeners like you. Thank you for your support. And by Cool Stuff Inc. Cool Stuff, in stock at coolstuffinc.com. The Dice Tower, episode 525.
One versus everyone else.
Welcome to The Dice Tower, a podcast about board games and card games, and especially the people who play them. On today's show, Tom and I are joined by Russ Wakelin from the D6 generation to discuss some recent games played, present a tale of horror, and answer a bunch of questions from the mailbag, leading to a discussion of board game storage options and more. Plus, Jeff badmouths dice, and we gang up on somebody for our top 10 one versus many games. I'm Eric Summerer, and here's your host, the Bob Saget of board gaming, Tom Vassell.
I'm not getting this thing here, Eric.
What, really? 1 versus 100?
Oh, I haven't seen that, actually. Is Bob Saget the...
That was a great game show. Yeah, he was the host.
Being called Bob Saget. He's like this really ultra nice guy on TV, and then anywhere else, like the total opposite. It's very odd.
Well, he does certainly work blue in his stand-up act, but he was a fun game show host.
He also did America's Funniest Home Videos for a while, right? So
the what now?
America's Funniest Home Videos.
What's that?
Are you mocking me here? I'm super confused.
No, I know what it is.
I'm honest when I don't understand one of your weird things.
No, I miss Bob Saget as the host of AFV. I never really liked Tom Bergeron or Alfonso Ribeiro.
Oh man,
I feel like it's lost some of the original, je ne sais quoi of the original series.
Well, actually, there's no reason for it to exist anymore because YouTube just does the same thing.
Right.
Speaking of YouTube, actually, that's a. Can I think? How could I do this? Anyway, we want to welcome to our show today, Russ Wakelin.
Oh, thank you, guys. And Tom, I would think, I'm surprised your segue was so weak there. I was expecting something really, really astounding to just bring it all together there. I was a little disappointed. I'm not going to lie.
Eric threw me off with his sarcasm about the thing. I didn't get it. It was weird. It was
right.
Weird. But maybe that should have been my segue. Speaking of weird.
There you go. Speaking of funny videos, but anyway, thank you for having me on the show, guys. It's always a pleasure. As you know, I'm a huge fan of the Dice Tower. Your podcast is the reason that inspired us to try one, the D6 generation. So always excited to be with you guys. This is great.
Well, you guys started not too long after we did, actually.
Not that far. We started in 2008, so we had a few years on us though before then.
Yeah, I forget sometimes how long we've been doing this.
You've been doing this a long time. I mean, because I remember listening to the whole career. It's been a long time. Been great stuff.
Yeah, since 2005.
Yeah, so we start to sound old at this point when we do this sort of thing. Like, if you don't want to actually say the number of years we've been doing this, because it gets a little scary.
For those
We're becoming the elder statesmen of board gaming.
Yes, the old grumpy people. Get off our podcasting lawn, as it were.
No, not old. I'm old's fine, but not grumpy. Not yet.
Okay.
For those of you who don't know, Russ runs a podcast we just mentioned at the D6 generation, which is supposedly about all kinds of gaming, but it's mostly miniatures.
It's a medley, Tom. But we do cover miniatures, RPGs, board games, and whatever else strikes our fancy.
It's always enjoyable. I'll listen to it, and Russ will be like, Craig will mention a game, Russ will be like, oh, that sounds like a new game, and it came out in 2007 or something.
Yes, exactly. We're keeping it fresh, Tom. Not all of us can, get 30 games a day from manufacturers. Some of us, catch up the old-fashioned way by buying them in stores.
We're really at this moment now where there's just, I normally before Essen, I'm like, all right, let's get ready. Here comes the Essen flood, and I'm already underneath water, with the amount of games. It's really at a point now where I think, the lists of like the best of the year are going to be more watched than ever by people because they can't keep up. There's just too much. Okay, so let's talk about some games that we will point to your way and say good or bad. And first, I will give you a good one. This is a 10 out of 10 for me, and that's a rare thing with a board game, and that's The Seventh Continent. Ooh. Now, The Seventh Continent, I guess the most negative thing I can say about it is that you can't buy it retail. You can only buy it through Kickstarter, and The first Kickstarter was extremely successful. They just sent out the games, and now they're running a second Kickstarter, which is even more successful. But I think that's the only way they're sending out the games. But the Seventh Continent is a choose-your-own-adventure style game. Have either of you seen it or played it?
I have seen it, but not played it.
I have only seen pictures. I'm hoping to play it this coming weekend.
Oh, good. Well, I think, Eric, I really think you will enjoy it. If you like time stories, I think this is very similar in many ways.
Okay.
What happens is you're stranded on an island, and there's a curse put upon you. And the game comes with like 5 or so curses. You pick one that you start on you. It's a joyous thing. But you start on this island that's part of this seventh continent, and then you just go. You can move around the island. You can explore things on the island. And the game has a very clever numbering system that's really similar to Unlock, where you will look for numbers. Sometimes there's a little hidden number on something, but sometimes like a card will say, go to 56. But if you have a boat, go to card 237. So there's interesting things like that, which I find fascinating, but also sometimes they'll say go to card 70, and there's 370, so you just pick one of them randomly.
Huh.
And so this game has this whole go through and try to figure out what's going on, and it's humongous. I mean, it's called the Seventh Continent. It's a continent. I mean, I think there's 500 cards in the game, and all sorts of things happen to you. It's a Pulp Fiction thing. It's very similar to Indiana Jones, maybe. Actually, a little bit prior to that. Like in the 20s maybe, but, not everything you come across is of this earth. I mean, when you have a curse put on you by a ghost, I guess that's pretty much, going to show you that that's happening. But it's so much fun for me because I haven't even beat the game yet or even come close. The game takes hours and hours and hours and hours and hours. And then when you lose, you can go back and do it again and try to go different ways, but there's still random events that happen. So nothing is ever quite exactly the same. And not everyone has hours and hours and hours. The game has an incredibly clean, we're talking 5-minute save system and restart system. So when cleaning up the game, I mean, you can put it away in 5 minutes and get it back out in 5 minutes. I was really impressed by that. It's all cards, except for your little guys moving around. And it's a kind of a free-flowing game. So let's say you, me, and Eric are playing the game. Russ might be like, I'm going to start a fire here. And I'll say, okay, I'll help you. And Eric will be like, all right, well, I'm going to go explore over here. And then Eric does it again. And then he does it again. There's no turn structure.
Oh, neat.
So it plays really well solitaire. I've played it solitaire. I played it with 2. I played it with 3. I'm just really loving just this sense of exploration. I'll go somewhere and be like, ooh, what's that? Oh, what does that do? Oh, there's a guy in a hut. Should we trade with him, or maybe we should just punch him in the face and steal all his stuff? Now you know which one I would choose, but the guy
punch him in the face. Yes.
Well, I only did it because of the people I was with. I don't want to look like a sissy. But
Tom, I love games that sort of have like a campaign mode. It sounds like this can remember where it is from game to game. How does it remember? Are there deck boxes? Are there notepads? How does it keep track of where you were?
You just take the card that you're on and put it in this part of the box that says save. And then you take all the items you have and stuff, and that's where you start back up. So the map that you've explored will go away, but you can just go back and pull it back out again. All the cards are numbered, so you can just stick them back in the different numbered spots. So the box goes from 1 to 777. Not every number's used. In fact, when you buy, there's some expansions that come with it. The expansions will give you 80 cards, and then you just slide them in, and they just go throughout the box. And it's really hard to talk about it without spoiling it. But it's just, I don't know. I mean, you go somewhere, and the game is based around this deck of cards. You have this deck of cards that's full of 30 cards that are generic, and then 5 cards that are attuned to each character who's playing. You mix these cards up, and whenever you do an action, you need a certain number of successes to do that action. So, I might want to go fishing on the beach, and it might say, draw 1 or more cards, and you need 3 successes. And I'm thinking, well, man, a success doesn't happen on every card. I'm going to draw 5 cards just to make sure. You can draw as many cards as you want, but those cards are your life. When you run out of those cards, you can lose the game. So you are constantly looking for ways to put cards back into your deck. But also when you turn these cards over, they have a certain number of successes on them. But they also are ideas. There's like a canoe or a stick or a club. And whenever you do a test and you turn over, like, let's say 5 cards, you can pick one of those cards and keep that card. And later on you can build that idea and it now becomes a piece of equipment for you to use. And like,
that's really neat.
There's like historical people in the game and there's made up people for the game, and then there's like we played with Dr. Frankenstein, and he actually resurrected Frankenstein's monster, who caused us some grief occasionally, but also would, like, when we climbed up a cliff, one point we just all got on his back like in The Princess Bride. It was great.
Plus, he has a lovely singing voice.
Anyone want a peanut?
Right.
So I'm just really agog over this game. I think it's fun. I don't know that it's everyone's style. Some people say, what about the replayability? Well, I played it for probably 15, 20 hours so far, and I've barely run across anything that was the same. It's like a Time Stories, but a more extended one. So just amazing. My highest recommendation.
Well, you know, what I'm impressed with is that it's another game that's gotten you to play solo, which, say, 6 months ago, you said, nope, not doing any of that. And there have been a couple of games lately that you...
This is ridiculous. Between Gloomhaven, Mansions of Madness, second edition, and this game, I'm sickened. I'm sickened by this. But here's where I'm drawing the line, Eric.
Okay.
I'm not playing any Euro games solo.
You say this now.
I agree with you, Eric. You say it now, Tom. It's only a matter of time.
Bleh.
Come to the dark
Eric,
side.
Eric,
yes.
I just realized.
Yeah.
I was going to bug you about this because I was going to the new Seventh Continent Kickstarter. You did the voice work for that, didn't you?
I did. I did the voice work for the original Kickstarter campaign as well as the new one, but I haven't played it yet. So I know a lot about it. But.
That's right. I remember talking this. I told Eric, in these situations, he needs to get, in the voice work thing, first copy of the game. That's what I would do.
They are sending me a copy of the game. I just haven't gotten it yet. So first game for me to talk about is the Dragon and Flagon, which is a Jeff, Brian, and Sydney Engelstein game. It's from Stronghold Games. It's got art by William Bricker, which is an artist I'm not familiar with. Very cartoony art style. In the Dragon and Flagon, you are in a tavern, a fantasy-style tavern. You can also, there's a flip side of the board that's pirate ships. But it's basically a bar brawl. The conceit, the MacGuffin here is that there is the Dragon Flagon, which is like a magical brew that this particular tavern makes that can give you some sort of superpowers if you drink it, but they only have one serving left, one mug full of the stuff that is set in the center of the game board. The rest of the board is populated by cool cardboard tables and mugs and wooden chairs and rugs, just all sorts of props that you know are going to get flung around the room. Everybody starts around the room. Depending on the number of players you're playing with, you have maybe 2 characters, 1 character, and these guys have sort of special powers, decks that are tuned to their strengths, and you will then program actions, simple ones like running or picking up an object like a mug or a chair, throwing said objects at people, and you are trying to not only go for the mug in the center, because if you get that mug, you unlock a very powerful card that you could then use, and then it goes away, but then if you drink the mug again, you can get it back. But also trying to attack your opponents and earn, I forget whether it's like fame or glory or something. Basically, do cool stuff and knock out the other people and earn fame points. And it's this closed economy, too. Everybody starts with like 20 of these points. And as you do stuff to the other players, you will take that fame from them. Like, I hit you with a chair, so obviously I'm cooler than you. You continue a certain number of turns. It's a variable endgame, and whoever has the most infamy, or not fame, whatever they're called, star tokens at the end of the game, will win the whole thing. This is all done by these actions that take time. So the more powerful actions will take more time and move you along the time track further. But if you are behind on the time track, you will be active for that round. And it's not just like a linear order. It's that I spent 1 time point last round, so now we move to this round. But there are several people that may be at this spot on the time track, so they get shuffled. You don't know exactly whether you're going to be able to act before or after someone that's on the same space as you. And if I have one complaint about the game, that may be it. It's a little... Because you don't know what's going to happen, you have to do a lot of shuffling of tokens and then keep track of who is active and then program those characters and add cards to their command line, basically, and then activate them in a random order and then move on to the next round and discuss who's active that round. It's not always easy to tell who is going to be acting in any particular time point. But it is silly, fun chaos. You can swing from chandeliers. You can wave your sword around. You can use your special abilities that no other player can do. It is goofy fun. And if approached in that manner, it's a blast. But if you try and overthink this one, I think you're going to be annoyed, I guess is the good word.
I 100% agree with you on this game, Eric. We're huge fans of Dragon and Flagon. We reviewed it in our show, Tom, way back in episode 196 when it first came out. But it's a
this is Eric, not me.
No, I'm just saying that we actually reviewed a game when it launched. I'm just throwing it out there.
This just took me a while to get to the table, but yeah,
no,
I agree.
It's fantastic, and I think you're exactly right. If you try to play it like Robo Rally, you'll get frustrated because things will change on you. But if you play it more like you're all drunk, so you might be swinging in the wrong direction, it works fine. It's wonderful. I love the little tricks like pull the rug out from somebody, and
yes.
it's a wonderful little game, and it comes together beautifully. It did another Engelstein classic, really great game.
Yeah, I also like the other thing I wanted to mention. And there's a damage mechanism that you don't have hit points, but you can get stunned, which forces you to program more cards than you were planning to. So
yes.
All of a sudden you're told you have to program one or two more cards on your mat. And so now you aren't able to react as well to what's going on in the board because you've had to make those decisions farther in the past, which is that is a unique mechanism that I don't think I've seen anywhere.
Yeah, there's three brilliant mechanics. That's the one that's really unique. The second one is using the time track like Red November did. And the third one is, you mentioned it, Eric, the star tokens or the glory. Mm-hmm. What's interesting about this is it prevents ganging up on one player because when you do something really heroic against someone else, you take their glory. So who's ever in last place and basically runs out of glory, there's no point in beating that person up anymore because there's nothing to get from them. So meanwhile, the first player has the most glory to get, so you automatically don't just keep beating up the one player who's been confused. You ignore him and go to the other person. Keeps the game balanced and nice catch-up mechanic.
Yeah. No, I enjoyed it. I think it's one I want to try some more and play with different characters. It's a blast.
Here's my
That's
concern
the Dragon and Flagon.
Here's my concern with the Dragon and the Flagon is I like it, but I make a lot of cuts in my collection. It cut my collection because I think it's a little slow for what it is at certain points, especially when you play with a lot of players. It's for a game that involves throwing bar stools and pulling rugs and, with a lot of people, it can move a little bit slowly, especially if you have one of those people in the game, and I wished it moved a little faster.
It certainly lasted a lot longer than it says on the box. You need to be very familiar with the cards. You have an entire deck of cards that you're given, and you can access any of those cards at any point. And so there's a lot of thinking that has to happen until you are very familiar with those decks.
Yep. So my game, the game that I am... are we supposed to pick one game we like and one game we don't like, Tom? I'm just trying to follow the format here.
You can do what you want.
Cool. So the game I like is Bunny Kingdom. Is this game I picked up at Gen Con by Aiello. And what's really fantastic about this game, I think last episode, Tom, you discussed... the last episode you were on of your own show, which would be 2 episodes ago, you discussed a game called Wizards Wanted. And I think you were surprised that Wizards Wanted sort of looked like a game designed for younger players, but had a lot of meat on its bones, right? We found the same thing. We actually got a track to that game at Gen Con, picked it up, and my family loves it, and my kids are in their teens now. Bunny Kingdom's sort of the same sort of thing. It looks like this cute little simple game for young players. It's this little board. It's got nice art on it. There's a grid on top of the board. And then inside the box are lots and lots and lots of little bunnies. Each player gets a pile of bunnies in their color. And these bunnies, if you look at them, they're really detailed. They look like small little bunnies, but they have you can see the little cottontails and little nose and little whiskers. They're very cute. And there's little plastic castles And the castles are all done up in bunny style, so the turrets are all inverted carrots. And if you look at carefully at the entrances, there's little crossed carrots at the entrance, full of these great cards with stunning artwork. A lot of the cards are plays on famous heroic characters, so there's like Braveheart as a bunny, things like that. Attila the Bun, Bun. And so all this great stuff going on in this game. And basically what happens is the game is really a drafting game. So with these cards, one giant deck of cards, super easy to set this game up. And you deal out 10 cards to each player. You pick 2 cards to use, and you pass the rest of your hand to your left. And the 2 cards you pick, you're going to immediately now play. And most of these cards are coordinates on the board. So let's say you get G5, you're going to put your bunny in the G5 space. And what you're trying to do is build little fiefdoms, which are connected squares on the board. So each square is a territory, and each time you have territories that are side by side with other bunnies of your color, that becomes a fiefdom. And you, of course, can have multiple fiefdoms on the board, because you might have 3 over here, 5 over there. And after you pick 2 cards, you play them, you pass your cards, you take the cards that were passed to you, you pick 2 more, you play them, you pass your cards. You're putting your bunnies on the board. Now, these cards also might include building things, like you may be able to build little fortresses, or you might be able to build little farms or additional resources the squares generate. And the reason you'll want to do this is at the end of the round, after everybody's passed and played all of their 10 cards, you're going to do a scoring round. And how that works is you look at each of your fiefdoms, and you're going to multiply the number of turrets in the strength of the space, which is the number of turrets on all the castles that are there, times the number of different resources that fiefdom generates. So if you have 3 squares that all generate fish, that's only 1, because it's resource type 1. And if you happen to have a palace there with 2 spires on it, that's 2 times 1, or 2 points. Now, if you had fish there and carrots coming out of that space, now you got 2 times 2, so it's worth 4 points. And, of course, the more towers you have, the better the multiplier is as well. So yes, a big part of the game mechanic is doing multiplications, so you're literally multiplying like bunnies. So after you do this, you score your round, and then you go on and you play another round. So 10 more cards get dealt out, and you keep passing the cards. And in the next round, of course, you pass your cards to the right instead of the left. What makes this really interesting is not only are you trying to do this multiplication and math situation as your fiefdoms grow, but in the first round, you're like, oh, this looks cool. I'll just take G5. I'll take H7. I'll try to get close to each other. But in the second round, you start to realize that, all of a sudden, if Eric gets B7, he's going to connect 2 fiefdoms into one mega fiefdom that's going to score him 30 points a round based on the multiplication. I can't possibly let Eric get B7, so I can't pass that card to him. But also in my hand are 2 other cards that I really need to complete my fiefdom. So now you've got a really complicated situation. What am I going to pass? And then I'm looking at what Tom needs, and I also realize I've got another card that Tom wants. And then to further make the game deeper, not only are these cards to build things, and not only are these cards to place your bunnies, but there's also these victory condition cards that float around. And these cards go face down. If you choose to keep one of these, they stay face down in front of you, but they serve as end-game score multipliers. So there might be a multiplier, score 4 points for each bunny you have in the corner of the table, or score points if you're the player with the most different fiefdoms, or score points for the player with the largest fiefdom, things like that. It's really, really interesting. It gets very deep. It is super simple to teach because the mechanics are dirt easy. My kids absolutely love it. It's a game that we just play over and over again. It literally gets done in 45 minutes, and the longest part of each turn is doing the multiplication at the end of the round. Great game. Really enjoying it. Can't recommend it highly enough. Bunny Kingdom.
Now, what I want to know is, did you come up with that multiplying like bunnies line, or is that in the rule book?
It's not. It's funny. It's not in the rule book. And on the back of each player has a quick reference card. And on one side, it talks about how you score. And the other side, there's a large multiplication grid that shows, so you can quickly multiply 17 times, 5 or whatever.
Right.
But it's not in the rule book anywhere. But I'm playing with my daughters, and I'm like, man, there's a lot of multiplication in this game, and I just said the line. It's like multiplying like oh wait, and I was like, oh. So they literally made the mechanics the theme, which is even better. So the designer it does slow the game down. I will say that scoring is very slow because you might have 6 fiefdoms, each player's got 5 fiefdoms, and you're kind of working it out, and each player's watching each other. But it actually is pretty cool because it kind of makes like a mini sort of like crescendo each round as you kind of see how much people scored. In the first round, each scored like 2, 3, 4. And all of a sudden, by round 2 or 3, you're scoring like 30, 60 a fiefdom. It's really pretty cool, and you feel it's very rewarding to pull something like that off.
You only need scoring only takes long if you aren't very good at math, I think.
Could be. Math is hard. I'm not going to deny that. It could be that that is part of it too is actually counting everything up. So what makes the game even more complex is you can. When you build things, the other thing you can build are these sky towers, they call them, and these are two little corner pieces. And when you get a build a sky tower card, you get two of the same color, and you can put them in any two places that you have a bunny. So what this allows you to do is actually it virtually connects two different fiefdoms. So I can have a fiefdom of 5 on one side of the board and a fiefdom of 6 on the other. And if I put a sky tower on those, now those two fiefdoms are considered adjacent. So. As you start to look at the board and trying to figure out, and then the real part of the game that takes forever is the very, very end when you start scoring, because these victory point bonus cards that come out are all over the place. It's like the player with the most territories. Well, those are like, I don't know what the number, 120 territories on the board, so you're counting up how many each different player owns. Pro tip, count the remaining bunnies of each player. And the guy with the most bunnies remaining, or least bunnies remaining, has the most territories on the board.
Oh, there you go.
We learned that a long time ago from Ticket to Ride, man. Come on,
good point. Fair. But I'm really enjoying it. Tom, have you played Bunny Kingdom? You must have played Bunny Kingdom.
Oh yeah, I really like this game. In fact, Sam just put in his top 100, and he said this is one of those games where he saw the cover and was like, "Nope." Mm-hmm. And I made him play it anyway because it had Richard Garfield's name on the cover.
Right, yeah.
And then I was like, it's drafting, like pulling him in. But yeah, I think it's fun. My only qualm with the game is that when you have all those bunnies on the board with all their 2 ears sticking up and all the castles, it's a visual just mess.
Well, they've been breeding like rabbits, Tom. You got to stick with the theme here.
I understand that, but this is one case where I think I almost would have preferred wooden rabbits.
Yeah, but the cost would have gone through the roof if you did wooden rabbits.
I know that's anathema for someone to say to Russ with his love of plastic, but
I want to paint the bunnies, Tom. I want to paint there's a lot of detail in these little castles. I want to paint them. I want to airbrush them all and then dry brush the little orange carrots on the top. It'll be awesome. It's happening.
So you're talking about the math during and at the end of the game. Is there a score tracker around the outside, or is there a pad that you're keeping score on?
There's a score tracker on the side of the game. So each player uses 2 plastic bunnies, one to track where they are, and then there's the game score goes so high that there's actually 3 little boxes for 100,
200, 300,
200, and 300. Yeah. It's pretty high scoring. Although we've only broken 220 as our highest score so far. So I'm sure we could do better with a little more practice.
Yeah, maybe. It depends on how the other players are playing and what's drafted and such.
Yep.
Okay, so that's Bunny Kingdom. Now let's go back to Eric talking in games again. And that's One Night Ultimate Alien. And I actually forgot to say this in my review, Eric, but I don't mind Eric's voice in the game at all, except in this game, for some reason, they had Eric read snarky things every once in a while. And it's just dumb. It really is. I've never. He says them. It's like, shut up. And and the problem is I know who's saying it too. And I'm just like, shut up, Eric. But I know he didn't write the script. But I wish you could take those out, Eric. I will say, because
is it not an option to take out snarky comments?
Actually, I didn't look. Maybe it is.
I want to say it's an option in the app.
Okay, I'll have to do that. Well, so One Night Ultimate Alien, and I'm going to assume everyone who's listening has heard of One Night Ultimate Werewolf before, and if not, go back and find our episode about that, or go watch my review. But it's very similar to One Night Ultimate Werewolf. Some people are aliens, werewolves. Some people are not, villagers. In fact, the back of all the cards has werewolves on them so that you can mix it with One Night Ultimate Werewolf, which I can't imagine anyone doing, but anyhow. So you do
It's all the same app, yeah.
It is all the same app. And so there's an app, and you absolutely need the app for this game, which is kind of odd because I can't imagine playing any of the One Night Ultimate games without the app. You just really need the app.
Definitely.
And the app's free anyway. So you play this game, people put their heads down, they do things various through the night, you wake up, and you have to figure out who the alien is. The big difference between One Night Ultimate Alien and the other ones is that it has randomness. It has randomness in 2 ways. Some of the characters, it will they do the same thing, but they'll do it in different ways. Like one character will say, look at a card of the person next to you, or in a different game it might say, look at a card of a even number character, or look at a card from a character whose number is lower than yours, or all kinds of things. And so there's some randomness in that way. And then there's this, what was it called, Eric? You've said it. There's a ripple in the time-space continuum. Right?
Yes.
They say that every single time, and then they just make up some rules. I mean, it's literally like some one guy sitting there and going, I'm going to try to put flux in this game. So let's do some weird thing. And I thought I would hate that, and I actually don't. It's entertaining. The only disadvantage of that is it does tend to make the night longer. And so much stuff's going on, but it's really hilarious. It's silly fun. I kind of went into this one saying, I'm done with the one night thing, but I'll try this one out. I tried it out. It's great. I'll keep it, but now I'm done with the one night thing. Okay, stop. There's enough of them.
Okay.
Yeah, well, I'm just saying, you can only take. Literally, the cow is out of milk. You really can't get any more.
But what if you could?
Anywho.
But let's just theoretically. Okay, anyway. Yes.
No, but I have to say, I did enjoy it. One Night Ultimate Vampire, I haven't kept that one. That one was okay. One Night Werewolf is good, but I think if I was playing just one, it would actually be Alien. Just because that wackiness and randomness is fun. And I play it mostly with my kids. My kids love the game. It's one of the most popular games I play here at home with them. So
I think I haven't actually played. I haven't played the game yet, but I did record all of the text, and this one is certainly more silly than the other versions. It intends to entertain just in the act of playing, or here the narration is intended to be entertaining on its own.
I don't even understand some of the comments that are made. Eric will say something, I'm like, what?
That's replayability, Tom. That's replayability. You listen to
You know what my favorite is, and that may be one that confuses you? One Night Ultimate Alien and the world's your oyster. It's a chess reference.
What does that
even
mean?
The musical Chess. Oh. It's a reference to One Night in Bangkok and the world's your oyster.
Yes.
One Night Ultimate Alien and the world's your oyster.
Yes, and that's in the app somewhere.
I got Chess in my head. All right. That's actually the only song I know from Chess.
That's really the only sound.
I think they define one-hit wonder.
All right, moving on to my second game. This is number 9, and it's spelled really weird. NMBR, and then the numeral 9. This is most recently out from Asmodee. I think it was originally, I forget. I think it's Schmidt-Spiele originally. But it's a design from Peter Wickman, and there is an artist, but it's like a design collective. Fiore Limited, a GmbH, which is the German title for limited. Which is fine because it's more of a graphic design thing. Number 9 uses these polyomino tiles that are numerals. So there's a 1 that's basically a straight line, and then there's a 0 that has a hole in the middle, and they're all shapes that represent these numerals. There's 2 of each number that you have, and then you shuffle up the deck, kind of like Take It Easy or Take It to the Limit, where everybody is going to be playing the same numbers, but you don't know what that sequence is going to be. So you flip up a numeral, and that's the first tile. It just goes right there on the table. You then continue to build, and you can either build on the floor level, on the ground level, by just putting it adjacent to tiles you've already placed, or you can start building up, but they have to be fully supported. You have to build a large enough base in order to put something on. You can't just take the number 9 that's on the ground and put another number 9 right on top of it. You have to actually straddle multiple tiles. But you also can't have any pieces hanging over the table. So you have to decide how big your base is going to be and how you can try and fit all of these tiles. At the end of the game, all the tiles on the table are worth 0. First level is worth 1 times the number, and then 2 times the number on the second level. Third level is 3 times, etc. Highest score wins. This is a lovely little game. And it's odd because in my mind it's not one that I want to hunt out for me to play a lot, but it's one that I want to give as a gift to a lot of people because this is one of those gateway family game day games that I'm always looking for to sort of entice my extended family to play more games. And so this is one that I want to put on like everybody's wish list or buy for all of my family members because it's that style of game. And exceedingly easy to explain and play, and it's over very quickly as well, so you can immediately start it up again, play it again, and theoretically play with as many players as you want if you get multiple sets. So I'm very happy with number 9.
Excellent. Well, so Tom gave me some rules here for this show because I have many more games I could talk about, but he said I could only talk about 2.
You're talking about 2 is like anyone else talking about 6.
It's true. So I will not talk about Rune Wars, the miniature game, or Dragonfire. If you want to learn about those, you have to go to my podcast at the d6generation.com. But
wait, this is cheating.
Edit that out, Eric.
Yes. Nor will I talk about Pit Crew because everyone knows Jeff Finkelstein gets enough love on this show and no one needs to talk about more of his games. So instead, also Tom inferred that we should talk about a game we like and a game we don't like. So I don't like to talk about games I don't like. So instead, I will talk about a game that Tom doesn't like. And that, of course, is Seafall, which I actually love. So I am now in game... Yes, Seafall. Don't believe the hate. Seafall is awesome. So I am now in game 12 of Seafall. With the same people. We've been playing together since the game 0, actually, because Seafall's got like a little prequel mode that you play to learn the game, and then you go into the actual campaign mode. I love Seafall, Eric, and I quite frankly, I think you would too, because at its heart, this game is sort of like a legacy game meets Tales of Arabian Nights, right? And it's
okay.
It's a storytelling game with a heavy pickup and delivery component to it as well, along with which you can do. It's like Merchants and Marauders, but better. If Merchants and Marauders became a legacy game, that's what this would be. And what's wonderful about it is what's really amazing, and I don't want to spoil it, so I really don't want to spoil it. There are parts that will frustrate players. So one of our players in our game got a little frustrated because he started building his empire. And for those who aren't familiar with Seafall at all, I think most people probably know what it is, but it's basically a seafaring game using the legacy mechanics where you're permanently altering the game each time you play it, right? So you'll be ripping up cards, you'll be putting stickers on the board, and this game starts off with a very bland board because most of it is sea that is yet to be explored. So throughout the game, you'll eventually be adding more stickers to the board that are creating more islands you can go explore. You will be altering your colony and kingdom, eventually be unlocking different things that, I don't want to spoil too much of the game here, but a lot more will be added to the game, and the game will move from a simple sort of colonial or Age of Sail era game to maybe it's going to have fantasy elements, maybe it's going to have other kinds of elements to it. For those of you who played Risk Legacy and know that sci-fi and all kinds of craziness gets interjected into it, you can imagine that crazy things might happen here as well. And very much like Tales of Arabian Nights, when you do things like explore a particular island, you're going to open this book and flip to a particular page and read about what you find there. So there's actually a story happening here, and there's a mystery going on. And actually what gets really interesting about this game, and you don't really see this till around I would say it's session 7 or 8. But again, your mileage may vary because depending on how aggressively your players go after certain events, it may come sooner or later, because what's interesting is there's always a way to get victory points, and each game is ended based on victory point count. But you can get these victory points essentially without actually doing any of the target goals, that mission, or that particular game. So each game there are a set of cards that are up, and these are objectives. And if you accomplish one of these objectives, you get a lot of victory points, and it advances the story even more. But it's actually possible to win and end a game without advancing the story. And that could be why some players don't enjoy the game, because I think if you stay away from doing that and just win it without advancing the story, the game could get kind of repetitive and dull. My crew likes to advance the story, so all of us are competing to be the guy that changes the story. There's an overall mission happening here, and what's really interesting about this, Eric, as the mission unfolds more and you try to learn more about what's happening in the world and who started the world and why everything is where it is, eventually it unlocks a really cool piece of technology, like literal technology in the game, that changes the way you view everything. So there's these guys called advisors, and these advisors, you've been working with them since the beginning of the game, and each advisor might be like an able-bodied captain or a really good raider, and they have these different stats that affect what you can do each turn, and they enhance what you do each turn. And there's a spot at the top where you name these people, and so if you're the first person to hire an advisor into your service, you get to name that card. And the next time you play the game, someone else might hire that advisor, but they're still named the person that you name. And what ends up happening is, over time, you start to kind of build relationships with these people. You kind of remember, oh, look, there is, Indiana Todd. I remember when he first came out, and he's the guy, everybody likes him. We have one guy named Aang the Airbender because he increases your sailing speed. And everybody loves this guy because it makes you go faster. So we all used to seeing Aang all the time. There's a pivot that happens about 3/4 of the way through the game that changes your perspective on all these people. And these people that have been helping you throughout the entire thing are now like, it's like, what? Aang, how could you do this to me? It's like this whole thing. I don't even know how to explain it without spoiling it. So I'll stop now. But I have to say, this game will reward you for sticking with it as long as you stick with the game, play by the rules, and don't spoil it by reading ahead or ripping open boxes and looking ahead. You gotta kind of play by the rules. But we are really enjoying it.
Wait,
and
what
even
kind
some
of
the players
thing is that? I don't get that. You're saying don't spoil it by reading ahead. Well, no kidding. You shouldn't do that with any legacy game.
Right, exactly. So don't do that.
I think he's digging against someone who might have done that.
Yeah, I'm not saying anybody on this show has ever done that. I'm just saying if you don't do that, right? That's all I'm saying. Okay. But I really, we have one player, for example, who's really trying to build up a merchant thing, and he got stuck with it for a while, and he thought he was going to lose. He thought there was no way, but there's a nice catch-up mechanic in the game where if you're really behind in points, you get starting multipliers to your resources. So you either get starting, you can pick what it is: starting gold, starting fame, help you buy, hire people more easily, and he really caught up now, and it's actually becoming a very tight game again. Even though he pretty much thought he was out. Because depending on sort of what the missions are that advance the story, there'll be multipliers for playstyles. So you might feel like in the mid-game, oh man, my playstyle is no longer getting multipliers, but be patient, they'll come back. So approach the game more as like there's a mystery and there's a story to learn about together, and less about who's going to win each week. When you play it.
Right.
And we're now at the point we play 2 or 3 games a week now, just because we're just having such a blast. So I don't know. I can't spoil anything else. I love to tell more details because it will spoil it. Eric, I think this is your cup of tea. I think you'd really like this game.
Well, I mean, that was my question. I've heard a lot of complaints that if you're presented with this, do I become a pirate? Do I become evil? Do I enslave the peoples I run into? Or do I go for the efficiency, the merchant strategy? And the early reports I heard is that if you go merchant, you're punished because those points, the bonuses aren't there. But to hear that things maybe swing back later makes me more interested. Because I would want to play as a merchant.
Yeah, but
I'd want to go for that.
But they swing back. It's kind of like saying, oh, Russ, you're winning. Hang on a moment. I go to the garage, get a baseball bat. I come in and hit him on the head. I then go back down to the garage, and he's sitting there going, ugh.
So here's what happens.
And we're catching up now. Woo!
They swing back in a way that a new mechanic gets introduced pretty early on that requires a lot of cargo to be able to take advantage of. And that's where the merchant players really jump in, because that kicks in. And at that point, the merchant players can really, to Tom's point, really blast ahead until the pirate players start realizing, oh, wait, we can steal those things the merchant players have been building, and they can go after them again. But there are mechanics to prevent that. So, like, there's multiple ways to do this. Meanwhile, exploration is pretty much always, in the early game, exploration is a guaranteed quick way to victory points. The problem is that once everything's explored, if you've really optimized your build for exploration, eventually most stuff's explored, and now that's not really a very, it's sort of like in a role-playing game where the fighters are awesome in the beginning, but eventually wizards become great, right? It's got that kind of feel where you got to build your company, you got to build your empire. The East Indian Trading Company wasn't built in a week. That's what I'm saying. So I really like it a lot. It's not going to be for everyone. It's primarily a storytelling game. If you're a role player and someone who's really more into stories, I think you'll like this more than if you're a player who likes competitive. It's not a good hyper-competitive game. It's definitely not that.
First of all, I don't disbelieve that Russ likes the game, but I want to clarify to our listeners that he's basically, on a few points, just a few, he's right. On everything else, he's totally incorrect. All right, but here's the deal: this is not one of those Tom hates the game. I really don't hate it. I found it just okay, basically. But I found it very work-like, and I'm not alone. If you go look at the ratings, this is not like a Tom's the only person who thinks this type thing. This is a majority of people actually don't really like the game.
I think you said it best at Gen Con. You said it best at Gen Con because you pointed at the big stack of them and said, look, Russ, it's on sale. So, I mean, you're not wrong. I mean, it's definitely not a hit. And it's a shame because I think it's a great game, but you're right. They missed the mark. to make this sort of appeal to everyone. There's a certain bit of voodoo that they missed to make it really
See, and I think
lovable.
part of the mark they missed is actually something that you're like raving about, and I don't get it, is this story. See, there's an overall story which is okay, but these little things that you go do, like this Tales of Arabian Night, they're almost all the same. It's like, hey, we found some natives. Should we exploit them or not? That is literally like almost everything you come across, and it gets really boring after a while.
But they start to level up. So like, but I hear what you're saying. But they do start that it starts to matter, like that the natives and when I can't spoil it. There are things that change that make a very us versus them situation.
But it's not cohesive. The writing styles are all very different.
That's true. But what happens is, like, if you've been someone who punishes the natives and get a lot of animosity, later that will come back to haunt you, like in a really bad way. And so,
no, I know it does, to the point of where that made me want to quit the game when that happened.
That's because you're abusing the native peoples, Tom.
I wasn't even doing that. I'm saying that it didn't happen to me. It happened to another player, and it was the most I've ever disliked something happening in a game like that. I was so upset with that one major change. However, and I got to be really careful. I use my words here. If I were people listening, I would wait a few months before getting Seafall and just go. All right. What else is on the market? And maybe that other stuff that is on the market is so unbelievably good. That's just my precognitions talking about this.
Well, but here's the thing.
I'm not joking. Do it.
No, you're right. I'm sure you're right, Tom, because you're Tom. But here's what I will say is that it's now a steal because the game did not do well. It is on sale pretty much everywhere at dirt cheap prices, and there's a lot of enjoyable game here. So I would agree with you, Tom, at its initial list price. If you got it way back when, it got a lot. I mean, I've already gotten so many hours of enjoyment out of it that, to me, if the greatest version of it comes out next month, I'm still thrilled because I would love to have another legacy game to play. But I do think it's a nice value now for folks. If you see it out there, if you like seafaring games, if you don't mind taking a little risk and you don't mind a game that is not terribly balanced but is a pretty neat story, I'd give it a try.
100%. Actually, I do agree with you on this. If you guys are interested, it isn't. It's pretty cheap. Get a copy.
It's true.
If nothing else, if nothing else, it's an interesting experience. Even if you like it, great. If you don't like it, I don't regret playing it. You know what I mean? There was some interesting things about it, and I actually do agree with Russ. I think Eric would like it, but that's mostly because of Eric's bad taste in games.
But what I need to do is convince my game group, who heard Tom bad-mouthing it and said they don't want to play it. So what I need Russ, I need you to convince them to play it.
Try it. You can't go wrong. There's cool technology in the game. There's a really cool little bit of technology, like literal technology that kicks in about halfway through that I think is really a clever idea.
Okay.
So I just want to throw that out there. Play till you see that. Play till you see the tech. If you get to the tech and you still don't like it, then stop. But I'm here to tell you, if you get that far, you're going to love it.
I back Russ up on that statement. Play till you get to that tech, and if you still like it, then you're good.
Yep.
Okay.
And now, another tale of board gaming horror.
Oh my, that's horrific.
Gather round, children. I have a weekly game group of 5 who will play anything that hits the table. A couple of years back, I introduced them to Risk Legacy. This went over great, and when Pandemic Legacy came out, it was bought instantly. We enjoyed playing it, even though we had to improvise, since Pandemic is a 4-player game. We solved this by taking turns sitting out a play. When Seafall hit the market, we had some doubts because of the mediocre reviews, but decided to try it anyway. We really want to form our own opinions. This day, we are on our 6th game of Seafall. Overall, the game is somewhat heavier and plays a bit longer than we would like, but we're enjoying the experience. I personally really like the story that develops in these legacy games. The active player, let's call him Bart, decides to use his turn to explore a site. He rolls the dice and is successful. After opening the storybook and reading aloud the short intro, he announces he will go for the dangerous option. He flips to the designated number and says, Wow, there's quite some text here. Bart starts reading aloud. The story seems a bit disconnected from the intro, but being non-native English speakers and knowing that legacy games can come up with a twist, we listen. We always let the reader finish and discuss any consequences and rules changes afterward. Bart is happily reading and finishes his text with the words, "The end." Stunned silence follows, and I hear myself and the others think, what did I just hear? This didn't sound like a non-trivial piece of text. This was more like a recap of the whole story arc. Somebody else asks, "Did we just hear the end of the whole game?" Bart goes back to the intro text. Uh-oh, I switched 2 numbers and read the wrong story. So yes, we are spoiled on the whole story arc. The other players say that they don't remember what the text said, but I'm sure I won't be surprised anymore in this legacy game.
I feel so bad for them here.
That is a tale of horror. That is definitely. But, I don't know that I would. That does stink, right? But I don't think it spoils a lot of the things that happen in the game. Like, I haven't actually read the final end of Seafall, so I don't really know how it ends. But I think there's enough surprises along the way and mechanic changes along the way. There's still a lot of things you're going to run into and be surprised about.
The hard thing about legacy games is you got to kind of go into it and be careful, number one. But the second thing is you got to also kind of blow these things off because you're going to inevitably – I don't know that I've ever played a legacy game where we didn't make some minor mistake.
Yeah.
Like even today I was playing a legacy game. And I opened something and I wasn't supposed to, and I saw something that wasn't that big of a deal anyway, but I was like, I realized it almost right away, so I just shut it, and I can't even remember what I saw. It wasn't that big of a deal. Just like, all right, let's move on. Okay, stupid Tom, that was a dumb mistake. But it wasn't the end of the world. You just get back on track.
We had that happen in Risk Legacy, so, there's those pods which have the other factions in there, and so we opened the correct pod. We opened the right pod, but the manufacturer had reversed what was put in each pod.
Oh, no!
It was the wrong faction. And we knew it was the wrong faction. As soon as we opened, we're like, well, A, it's like, oh my God, there's another whole faction. And then B, where's the one we were supposed to get? And so, but the only good thing about it was that we could see what we had to do to open the other pod too, that we should have opened. So we basically rigged the rest of the game to allow the player to achieve that goal, to make it happen, so that we would be
you got both of them?
where we should be in this thing. So that's the
Wait a minute, did you release both those factions in the same game?
Yes, we did. We totally did. It was awesome.
Whoa!
It was awesome.
Goodness! Oh my goodness!
It took the entire table colluding with one player to make it happen, but it was epic.
We're going to have to put like a giant spoiler tag over this entire episode, by the way.
We kind of do. It's the legacy of
No,
legacy.
that's not a... No, listen, no, that's not a...
I think the statute... What's the statute of limitations on legacy games?
No, the statute of legacy is over for that one. Tough.
Okay.
you can't even find it anymore anyway.
Yeah.
But I find myself struggling. Like today we were playing a legacy game, and it was, do I do this thing to open the box, or do we try to win? And I hate those situations because I always want to open the box.
Yeah, I do too.
And in Risk Legacy, I went out of my way. They're like, you need to do this and this and this to do this. And I was like, well, let's get it done. It doesn't matter. Okay.
3, 2, 1, go.
It's time for Game Tech with Jeff Engelstein, where we find out how games really work.
I've heard some people say about themselves, dice are my vice. Now, dice have an incredibly long history, with the earliest ones being found almost 5,000 years ago. And the Egyptian games of Mehen and Senet, which date back almost 6,000 years, used throwing sticks as a randomizing element. Now, throughout history, dice games have had a bit of a negative reputation. Dice have frequently been considered a vice. Back in episode 305 of the Dice Tower, I talked about Buddha's list of forbidden games, a list originally from the Brahmajala Sutta written around 500 BC. Now, while most of the games in that list are reasonably specific, like games on boards with 8 or 10 rows, there is just a prohibition on games of throwing dice. No qualifications there. Now, the ancient Greeks had a complex relationship with dice games. Many philosophers came out against gambling in general, and dice games in particular, worried that they would cause chaos in society. However, gambling was very popular, and there's no evidence that there was any tight governmental control. Sophocles claimed that dice were invented during the Trojan War by the mythic hero Palamedes. The idea of heroes playing dice games during the Trojan War became a common theme in Greek art. There are many vases preserved to this day that are illustrated with the scene of Achilles and Ajax playing dice against each other, a famous story in ancient Greece. Now, in the Iliad, Ajax is a fantastic warrior, but he was always the second best, just behind Achilles. When Achilles decides to sulk in his tent because he was insulted by Agamemnon, Ajax steps up big time. The Trojans battle almost to the Greek ships before Ajax pushes them back, saving the day. Now, when a hero was killed at Troy, the custom was that his armor would be passed to another deserving hero. And after Achilles is killed, Ajax assumes that since now he is the best warrior for the Greeks, he will receive the armor of Achilles, which was blessed by the gods. However, Odysseus takes the floor, and using his silver tongue, convinces everyone that he deserves the armor. Ajax is furious and ends up going mad and spends his entire life as second best. Now, this is nicely illustrated on the vases showing the dice game between Ajax and Achilles. Typically, Athena is shown in between them, her outstretched arm pointing at Achilles to show he is favored, and holding up fingers indicating the score for each hero. While the numbers vary on different vases, in all Achilles is shown as having more points than Ajax, typically 4-2. Ajax is shown as tense and coiled, and Achilles as relaxed and leaning back. Poor Ajax just can't get a break. Now, in ancient Rome, gambling was illegal, but was also endemic. If caught playing a dice game, the players had to pay a fine of 4 times the stakes. And to make this more difficult, the citizens started using tokens to represent the money they were playing for. They basically invented casino chips. And cheating was also rampant with dice, as people made dice with lead inserts, among other cheating devices. A variety of anti-cheating techniques were developed, including one we still use today, the dice tower. Now, one last stop in our tour of the problems dice have caused in the ancient world. The Mahabharata is arguably the most epic poem ever written. Composed in India over many, many hundreds of years, it reached its final form around 300 AD. It has over 20,000 verses and is about 10 times longer than the Iliad and the Odyssey combined. The story is about a dynastic conflict between two families, and the story is set in motion by, you guessed it, a dice game. The two sides of the conflict, and I apologize for my pronunciation in advance here, are the Pandavas and the Kauravas. The Pandavas have become strong, and the Kauravas realize they cannot defeat them on the battlefield. So the leader of the Kauravas, Duryodhana, takes the advice of his devious uncle Shakuni and challenges the Pandava leader Yudhishthira to a game of dice, knowing several key facts. First, according to custom, Yudhishthira is not allowed to refuse a challenge from another king. Second, his uncle Shakuni is an accomplished cheater at dice. And third, Yudhishthira has a gambling problem. And sure enough, all of these factors come together in a dramatic sequence as Yudhishthira gambles away his entire kingdom, then his brothers, then his own freedom, and finally his wife. The rest of the story is about how Yudhishthira spends 12 years in exile, restores his kingdom, and ends with a suitably epic war. Now, the Mahabharata is clear in its moral stance. Dice games are not a good way to spend your time, especially if dice are your vice. This is Jeff Engelstein with Game Tech.
I believe he just shot up your logo.
He did shoot up my logo.
And you just praised him and said he was amazing.
Yeah.
You have to accept what he said.
Well,
he basically said dice are terrible.
No, well, I think, dice get a bad rap, as quite frankly do cards, because a lot of folks who, a lot of the historic, because Jeff had some great historical references in there about folks who are basically after gambling, right? Because dice traditionally was a gambling tool, and so were cards. And a lot of folks also say there's no card games on Sunday or the certain times because of similar gambling. So I think the association there is with the gambling aspect of both cards and dice, and not the random element that both dice and cards inject in the game. Was that your interpretation, gentlemen?
Yes, that's really. I mean, I'm always surprised at the immediate backlash at dice or cards. Oh no, we can't have those. because it really is a rail against gambling and not the actual devices themselves.
And I will say, I do know a lot of gamers don't care for dice or cards because they think that not having random components in the game makes the game more strategic. But I did want to share this because when I was listening to Jeff's segment, I thought about this element. So in my real job, so in the job where they pay me something, I am a product manager, which basically means we do strategic thinking and strategic planning for the company. And one of the things I teach my new product managers when they come to the company is I reference this article actually from the Harvard Business Review many years ago, which was titled, "Why Smart People Are Bad at Thinking Strategically." And the hypothesis, which I found to be very true, is that smart people don't like to deal with uncertainty. And the problem with strategic thinking and thinking into the future is there is uncertainty. And so when you're planning what your business should do or what anybody should do over a period of time, where you should invest your money or anything, there's this uncertainty thing and you don't know. And so it's how you deal with uncertainty. So games without uncertainty are actually, in my opinion, less realistically strategic than games with random elements, because now you have to be able to build a strategy that can react and compensate for the most likely events that may happen. And if the unlikely happens, how do you respond to that? So I do like, dice are my vice, I do like some random elements in my games.
Wow, that's a really good argument.
Take that, Jeff.
That's wow. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, it
Russ,
took me all night. I had to think about that a while. But yes, now I've got it.
We agree with you, Jeff. Russ is wrong, but you can talk to him later.
Send letters to Jeff Finkelstein at... anyway.
2 questions.
Tom.
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 Hi, Tom.
How many meeples tall are you?
How many game pieces have you broken with that gavel you use?
If you could eat at a restaurant based on any game, what would it be?
And now, the Dice Tower will authoritatively, definitely, possibly, maybe, answer your questions.
Tom, which way to the game library?
All right, Ethan has a 2-part question. We'll begin with the first. What is the best way to store games on your shelves? Do you prefer vertically or lying down horizontally? Do you have a preference? I think, I like the aesthetics of vertically. I just like that bookshelf look, and for the longest time, that's how I made all of my games sit, if at all possible. But it seems like more and more often I'm forced to put a game horizontally, just because of the way it's laid out. The insert doesn't keep everything as tight as I'd like, or like with something like the Pathfinder Adventure card game, you don't want to tip that on its side.
Right.
That would be bad. The Legendary, same thing. Those cards. Yeah, and, anything that has sorted components that you need to stay exactly where they are, I have to put them horizontally now, and I need to redesign my shelves so that more games can fit that way on the shelf.
Now, are you both box keepers? Do you need to store your games in the original boxes?
90% yes. I don't care about card games. I'll take card games out and put them in little box things. Yeah. Mm-hmm. But I have a feeling I know where this is going.
Well, so I've been experimenting with this because I'm a box keeper. Like I feel like especially I have some of the older coffin box games from Fantasy Flight, like StarCraft and some of the really old stuff, and I just love looking at that mass. I mean, it's a problem because there's a lot of wasted space in that box, and I could certainly break it down into smaller, but it just looks so cool, and the game is very epic, so having the epic box for the epic game, you want that visual pow. But I have been experimenting with things like Game Folio, which is basically really a 3-ring binder. It's not a 3-ring binder, but it's a 3-ring binder sized sort of nylon mesh sort of thing that has a bunch of little pockets in it from individual components, and it's got slots for the boards, and you can really break down. Like I got a game like Clank in there, I've got Assault of the Giants in there, I've got several different games that fit into these things. They're a little bit bigger than a hardcover book, and so you can easily stack them on their side. They keep the components sorted in these little pods with Velcro lids, Eric, so you can turn them sideways or upside down and they won't make a mess. Mm-hmm. And they're super easy to transport. You just grab one and go, throw it in your backpack. You're going camping for the weekend. You can take 2 or 3. So they're all equally sized. So I love it, but I'm now torn because I really like how this works, and they do fit most of my games. Like I've got a all of Star Trek Ascendancy with all the expansions inside 2 game folios, which is a huge savings of space. But again, and that's even got little plastic bits in it. But again, like I'm losing the cool box art, so I have this emotional problem. But if you're looking for efficiency, that's a way to go.
Yeah, I did some work for Bitbox, which is another one of these alternate storage systems that sort of, it's almost like a card catalog file system. And then in return, or as part of this relationship, they sent me one of their sample boxes. I have the large and the portable version. And I keep looking for the perfect game to use it with. I'm trying to find something that the box just is silly, like it's the wrong size, it has too much extra space, I really want to condense it down, or it's a damaged box and trying to box it into something else. But I still haven't found like the perfect games to put in it. And to actually convert to this, because like you said, I like having the game box. Yeah. I like having that aesthetic thing to pull off the shelf. And you really have to switch mindset to go to one of these systems. And there are some that are lovely, and there's a lot of positives about them. They have uniform shelf space, and they're far more condensed. They're easier to take more games somewhere, to put more on the shelf. But you really have to make that mental leap to be willing to get rid of the boxes.
Yeah.
It is interesting. I'm kind of torn on this because I really like the boxes too, and I like the way the game shelf looks with the boxes on them. But the game folio looks so organized. I'm a guy who likes everything organized. Now, I mean, it's expensive if you want to if you have a large collection, but they are high quality. I've definitely looked at them. Actually, incidentally, I think they're running a Kickstarter right now.
They are. They did coming out with version 2. I backed the first Kickstarter and got many more than I expected, which is actually really handy. So I've been using them, but again, I'm having trouble parting some of my boxes for emotional reasons, right?
But couldn't you see, like, if you had unlimited funds, I could see, like, if I had a game library, this would be a great thing. I'd be like, all right, slide this in right there.
Yeah.
Whoop, it'd fit on the shelves.
Yeah.
It'd be so amazing. But another thing this is coming to Kickstarter soon. It's called Box Throne board game shelves.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, these look
Have you
interesting.
seen that, Eric?
Yeah, I don't know if I'm sold on the aesthetics of the final product, but functionally they look really cool.
So what they are, folks, is they're just shelves, but you have one game per shelf. They're like super thin shelves that you can adjust the height of them. And so you can put your games horizontally. The way I would prefer they would be if you didn't have to pull a box out and then 6 fall on top of it.
Yeah.
Or you have to sit there and go, maybe I shouldn't put Descent on top of that.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
Yeah. And so the problem is I have IKEA. I love IKEA. And I don't know if I want to get all these, but I was thinking for this Box Throne thing, maybe getting like a few of these for my house and keep some games in like a display area, like some very common games. I think that could be pretty neat.
Yeah.
And, this would be good for kids too, because I have some kid gaming shelves behind me that I'm talking in front of right now, and they pull the games out and they fall on the floor, all the other ones and everything. If there was one game per shelf thing, it'd be pretty easy to say, hey, there's a missing game there. Oh, yeah, it's on the kitchen counter. Put it away.
Okay. So is it modular enough where it basically custom sizes to each game box, so you're storing the original boxes, but there's like a shelf that's exactly that size sort of thing?
Yeah, I'm looking at the shelves, and they fit almost every game in. There's obviously going to be some of those games that are too big, but they're fitting in the Hasbro ones. Like, they actually show Risk Legacy, so those fit in the long way. I see the Smash Up box, the deluxe one. That's a pretty big box. They have, they're mostly putting in these big boxes.
They're they're adjustable, so you've got the rack.
Now, yeah. Yep.
Yeah, and then you can adjust. There's like a whole. Most of these adjustable shelves only have a few positions for the various shelves, but this one has a ton of, like, every centimeter or two has a slot, so you can really specifically adjust these shelves to fit just the games you're trying to put on there. See,
I have like a walk-in. It's not a finished closet, but like a walk-in closet in my basement, and I have sort of the giant plastic shelves you get at Home Depot, just full of games. This is much better. This appeals to me, I got to say.
Now, I don't know what the price on these is yet because they're not running the Kickstarter. So, but this is an interesting thing, I think. I'm going to keep one eye on this. So I hope it's cool.
Yeah, the functionality is very neat.
it's a new space. Me and Z were talking about this today. Like the bags for your games, I believe that's been covered by like 600 different companies now.
It has, yeah.
The storage units. The Game Folio is kind of the most unique of them, but there's a lot of them. The game shelves, there's not really anyone. These shelves look like, Z said they look like if the Container Store made shelves.
Yes.
Yeah.
For games.
Yeah.
Yep.
That's what these look like. And I think that's a good analogy. I mean, if IKEA made game shelves specifically for games, they would be amazing.
This looks like, well, what's cool, I'm watching this video now, what's really cool is that you get these, the frame, and you put the wire shelves in there to hold the games at the right height, but then you can put wire frames between the two frames and actually get a third set of games. Well, it's really pretty brilliant. It's very clever, very modular.
Yeah.
I'm really curious what the price is.
And it has a modern look to it. So
it does have the sort of
there's
IKEA look. Yeah, a little bit of that going on. Oh, that's cool.
So Ethan has a second half of his question regarding King of Tokyo and King of New York. His basically question is, can I use expansions for King of Tokyo with King of New York? Because he prefers, or I think he thinks he likes New York better because it has the mechanic of destroying buildings. He likes doing that. But there aren't many expansions for King of New York, but there's a whole bunch for Tokyo.
There's not, but the new power-up expansion for King of Tokyo had, or King of New York had a power-up expansion for it and stuff. There's a little funky, weird stuff going on there. I'm not sure exactly why they're not completely compatible, but I think each of these new monster packs that comes out, like Godzilla and King Kong, have cards for King of Tokyo and King of New York. I wouldn't be surprised if over the years you're going to see support for King of New York fade away. Because I like it a lot, too. I think it's just as good as King of Tokyo. But most people prefer King of Tokyo. I know it's vastly outselling New York. So if you're only going to get one, I would stick with Tokyo because you know there's going to be expansions for that one.
All right.
Our next question comes from an anonymous person. And they said they got a spam mail from a publisher. No. I'm deleting the name of the publisher here. Right. They wanted to delete this mail, but... they wanted to know, is it okay to treat your Kickstarter backers this way? They backed the game in February 2014. The Kickstarter delivered without any problems, no big deal. But after the campaign, every time that this company runs another Kickstarter, they send a message out to them and say, hey, we're running a new thing. Companies give backers the option to subscribe to a newsletter like Tasty Minstrel or Stonemeyer, and he likes that, but he wonders if this is an abuse to continue sending these, hey, we have another campaign, hey, there's another campaign going on, to people who've backed one campaign. Where should you draw the line, and when does it turn into abuse?
Yeah, I have this problem. I get this exact situation, and it's from manufacturers I really like, too, sometimes. And I feel like what confuses me about it is, like, it'll be on the topic of the Kickstarter, it comes to you as saying, like, you backed item X. This is an item X notification, and they're really talking about a new Kickstarter they're doing. But I was hoping I was going to get an update on one of the stretch goals that's, a year late, right? So it's definitely bothersome if it's teasing me about one thing. But quite frankly, I feel like the etiquette should be here. If it's not about the original Kickstarter, then you should move on to a new Kickstarter and get me to subscribe to that. That's my feeling.
I think there should be a little bit of leeway if it is a related product. Certainly if it is another expansion to the thing you just backed. I totally understand, though, Russ, if you haven't gotten everything from Kickstarter A and they're writing to tell you about Kickstarter B, that's pretty frustrating. Yes. But if it's something that's been fully delivered, everything's great, it's essentially a dead campaign. And then they use that mailing list to say, hey, we have a new expansion coming out. And it's a single message. Just so you know, we have a new one. The campaign begins X. We thought you might be interested. And that's it. I'm okay with that. Because that's telling me about something I know I'm interested in. And it fits. What really bothers me is when they use the past mailing list almost as a parallel update system to their new Kickstarter. And you start getting, hey, we're getting some great stretch goals, or hey, we're about to reach this new milestone, or hey, we only have 48 hours left. You better hurry to back this new game. that's when I get annoyed. And even if you do go back Kickstarter B, now you're getting 2 notifications every time something gets updated. And that's frustrating. And I think that is crossing a line.
Oh, yeah. Now, that's happened to me before where I'm like, wait a minute, they just sent out this update.
Yeah.
I'm like, oh, it's because of the other project. I do think it's legitimate to send out something to the backers of a hopefully completed Kickstarter and say there's a new one starting. And I actually like that sometimes, like, oh, there's a new thing starting. I do that with the Dice Tower. We run our Kickstarter each year, and I send out a thing to the backers saying from the last year one saying that we've done it. But I don't think you need to keep sending out updates on the other one.
I agree with you guys now because I just realized I did get an update from GameFolio on the Kickstarter email saying GameFolio 2 is coming out. And for me, that was totally cool because I already got my GameFolio. I'm like, ooh, they're doing a new one. Maybe I need more, which I don't, but, but so I thought that was fine. So I think you're right, Eric. I think it bothers me when it's either completely orthogonal, like totally unrelated, or if it's something I haven't received yet and they're already on the next thing.
All right. Well, that's all the questions we're going to do, folks, today because we've already gone on a while and we still have a top 10 list to do. Me and Eric versus Russ.
Okay, fair. I'll take you both on.
It's a Dice Tower Top 10!
The Dice Tower's Top 10 list is sponsored by Cool Stuff Inc. Cool Stuff Inc. Cool stuff in stock at coolstuffinc.com.
You know, it's odd, folks, that this is a top 10 list that we've been asked to do for a while. We've never done this.
Really?
I'm shocked.
I could have sworn we did this. You checked?
Well, maybe we... No, I didn't.
Oh.
I don't remember doing this. I mean...
Maybe we've just thought about it so many times that I think we did it already.
Well, now I'm running this up here.
It certainly wasn't recently.
Yeah, I mean, it's... Well, there isn't that many of these, actually. When I was making the list, I thought, well, there's like...
You thought there...
Am I going to even be able to get 10? But I was.
You thought there weren't, but now look at this. There's a lot of these things out there now, I think.
It is. And I really like these. Now, don't get me wrong, I like team versus team, and that's a different category, actually, and we'll talk about that in a future podcast. It's planned. But the one versus all, I'll tell you, in almost every situation in these one versus all games, I like being the one.
Me too. And you and I have talked about this before, Tom. This is my favorite genre as well, or it is my favorite genre. And I don't know what it is about this genre, but I like being the solo person, and I love this idea of one brain against multiple brains. I think it's fun.
I still like the teamwork aspect of trying to defeat the mastermind, though, too, and work. It's almost a co-op game, except one of you is not cooperating.
Well, here's the problem, Eric. Me and Russ both want to be the one, and you want to be against the one, so we're actually the team, and you're the one.
Ooh, yes. We got to switch this around.
What a twist.
It's a twist. All right. Well, we better get going here. Let's get started.
Let's do it.
Number 10.
My number 10 is a re-release from, it's Osprey Games, and they did Escape from Colditz, which, gameplay-wise, wasn't my favorite, but I have to give them super points for their production of this whole thing. Most of you are trying to escape from a prison, but one player is playing the German forces running the prison, and it's almost a game of tag. You're trying to keep these people inside the prison, keep them from escaping and collecting the items that they need in order to do so. But there are so many, like each of the prisoner players has several pawns, and they're just spreading them out and trying to distract your guards. You cannot goaltend everybody, and that makes it a pretty interesting exercise as you try and keep them out, or in. Yes, keep them in. Escape from Colditz, number 10.
Yeah, I heard that this one is a little dated, so that's the main reason I haven't got to it, but I've always wanted to play because I love the theme.
It is definitely dated, but theme is there for sure.
Speaking of dated, mine is an old game, nostalgic really, and that's Clue the Museum Caper. This is, I would love to see this reprinted, maybe that with a few things added to it, but in this game where one person is secretly robbing the mansion of Mr. Body, I guess is before they kill him in Clue, and they're just sneaking around. It's a little bit like Scotland Yard, just sneaking around and stealing paintings. Paintings are disappearing, and everyone else is trying to use the cameras and stuff to catch them. It's fairly light, but it's just fun, and it has such a cool-looking board. This is one that the restoration guys need to mess with. That's Clue the Museum Caper.
That'd be cool. Well, it's funny, we all went for nostalgia in old games because my number 10 is also very old, and it is Hero Quest, the original Hero Quest published originally by Milton Bradley, and of course was a Games Workshop game. And what I love about this game, it does not stand up. If you were to grab it now, I mean, I know there's some people out there that will pummel me, but I don't think Hero Quest stands up today. But it was really the first one versus many dungeon crawl game where you could get in there and you had plastic models for these different monsters and plastic models for the heroes, and you played with an overlord who was not actually a dungeon master trying to make sure you had a good time, but actively kill all the heroes. And so just for its nostalgia factor alone, and the fact that it kind of started it all with Overlord Dungeon Crawlers, Hero Quest.
Yeah, I got to play this at Gen Con for the first time, and yeah, it's a neat game. Doesn't really stand up when you put it up against modern designs. It's pretty basic when it comes to combat and stats and that sort of thing. But I can certainly see if I had this in my hands in 1989, 1990, I would be pretty excited about it. So I can certainly see this.
I did have it in my hands in those days, and it was exciting.
It was awesome, yep.
Number 9.
Number 9 is a kid's game. It's The Enchanted Tower. One player plays an evil wizard who has imprisoned this princess in a plastic tower. It's actually a spring-loaded princess that slams into this tower and has hidden the key somewhere under one of the spaces of the board. There's actually like little divots underneath all of these spaces, and all the other players turn away, and the evil player hides the key, and the good players are trying to find the key. They have magnetic pieces, and they're moving their one hero around the board, and if the hero stands on the key, he's going to suck it up. Click! I found the key. Meanwhile, the wizard has to start from farther off the board, but works his way up and then is heading straight toward the key, most likely. And if the wizard gets there first, he's going to get a chance to unlock the princess. And if the good players get there first, they're going to get a chance to unlock the princess. This key can plug into 6 locations in the princess's tower. And if you're correct, she pops out, ejector seat out of the tower. And if you are incorrect, nothing happens. You reset, and you have to remember which lock was incorrect. And hopefully you get another chance. Neat game of hide and seek, The Enchanted Tower, my number 9.
Good choice, good choice. My number 9 is another classic, and that's Scotland Yard or New York Chase. They're essentially the exact same game, just one's in New York and one's in London. This is a game I got as a teenager. I loved it. I loved the idea of trying to hide from everybody, and it seemed like a pretty balanced game. As I've gotten older, it's really hard for Mr. X. If you have detectives who are working together in unison, it's almost impossible for Mr. X to hide. But it's still fun to try, and this specific game has led to many other great games in this genre. The genre of this one versus all is mostly 2 types. Someone's running, everyone's finding them. Or Dungeon Master and everyone's fighting against that Dungeon Master. Mm-hmm. That's not exclusive. There's a few games we have that are not in that category, but most are. So anyway, Scotland Yard, I think, is the founder of the hide and everyone finds them. There's a lot of games that owe their roots to Scotland Yard.
Mm-hmm. I love Scotland Yard. That's a great choice, Tom. My number 9 is arguably a cheat, but there's a couple games on this list that I would argue there's a third type.
No, this is legitimate.
So in Betrayal and House on the Hill, this game, there is eventually a player who is against everyone else. But what's interesting about this one is, unlike all the other games that we're going to talk about on the list, with one other exception on my list, you don't know who the enemy is from the very beginning, and it will change as you play. So it will eventually be one versus many, but you're not going to know who the one is. And so I don't think even the reprint of Betrayal doesn't really stand up in terms of its randomness and some of the wacky things that can happen, and some of the final scenarios that play out are a lot more fun than others. But just as a nod to sort of one of the early games to try this and to do it with a really strong storytelling theme, I really like Betrayal at House on the Hill for what it accomplished at the time.
Now, we were just talking about what role in this dichotomy that we want to play. And now that I think about it, playing Betrayal at the House on the Hill, as you work your way through the first part of the story before the haunt, I remember always thinking, I hope I'm the betrayer. I hope I get to be the one that gets the special rules. So maybe I do want to be the one.
What a jerk.
Yeah. Sometimes you do, yeah.
Well, actually, Rusty, have you heard of Betrayal at Baldur's Gate?
Yes, but I've not played it yet. Have you tried it?
I have, and it's pretty much the exact same game with a Dungeons and Dragons theme on it, and they did a good job at integrating the Dungeons and Dragons theme. It might be more balanced. I don't know. I haven't run into any problems yet. I will say that 10 of the 50 haunts are co-op, which is not the same way the original one
Yeah, it's not
was.
the same. Yeah, right.
We played one, you can watch it online, where we played it, and a dragon just came roaring into town, and we had to find the dragon's eggs before he ate us all alive. And actually, I believe I got eaten anyway. But still, yeah, I like it. It's a once-a-year thing for me because of the fun stories. But yeah, cool.
Number 8.
My number 8 is Not Alone, which is currently published by Stronghold Games. This is another game of hide and seek. One player is playing like this malevolent being that is essentially trying to tag where the other players, the human players, are going to be at any given moment. And the human players are trying to visit certain locations which have actions. And if you successfully get to trigger the actions, you're going to get to do cool stuff. But if you use the obvious action, go to the obvious location, then the malevolent being is going to find you. And after a certain number of tags, you're going to lose. It's very different, but it's one of those guess what your opponents are thinking sort of games. Not Alone, number 8.
Sorry, I was waiting for Russ, and it was me. My number 8 is one that doesn't fall into these categories. It actually kind of falls into a light war game category, and that's Fortress America. This is, man, I have my nostalgic picks. I'm getting them out of the way, but they're fun. And Fantasy Flight actually reprinted this a few years ago, where one person is playing America, land of the free, against the evil communist raiders, which are coming from every single direction except Canada. And just pouring in there. And at the beginning of the game, you're like, how is this possibly fair? It is literally 3 against 1 until you realize that the U.S. has been sticking lasers in their satellites and start shooting stuff. And the invaders have to win really quickly because as time goes by, America just gets better and better. And they keep bringing in reinforcements, and the invaders get nothing. They got to survive. And I don't know. Nostalgia plays part of this, but I played it recently. And it's a little longer than it should be, but it's still a pretty fun game. That's Fortress America, Go Wolverines.
Oh, that's a great choice, Tom. I had the original copy of that, the Game Master series from Milton Bradley. I love that game for exactly the reasons you described. A lot of fun. So my number 8, I picked Shadow over Camelot. Now, this the game categorization purists will say this is a hidden traitor mechanic game and not a many versus one game, but I prefer Shadows over Camelot with a single traitor. And always having one traitor in the game. I know if you play by the core rules, there could sometimes not be a traitor, but I like to play the optional rule. They always have the traitor. What I think is unique about this is then there's always one person against everyone, and only the traitor knows who he is. So unlike Betrayal, where no one knows who the traitor is, or some of the other games where everybody knows who the other player is, in this one, someone knows they're the bad guy, but not everybody else knows they're the bad guy, and you have to figure out who it is. So I really like this element where it's still many versus one, but you have the added benefit of being undercover. And I still like Shadow over Camelot. A lot of people would say that Battlestar Galactica has replaced Shadow over Camelot, but A, that's teams because there's more than one Cylon usually, and B, I think Battlestar still outstays its welcome. I think Shadow over Camelot is a tighter game, and I really like the components.
Number 7.
My number 7 is Lord of the Rings using the Sauron expansion. The Sauron takes some of the random elements that are sort of the game mechanics of Lord of the Rings and makes it an evil player who sits there cackling, holding a bunch of cards, and uses the Nazgul to try and chase down the good players. What I really like about it is that the good players in Lord of the Rings need to discuss and coordinate in order to successfully move through the board. I'll take this if you take this. I'll take the ring, or if I do this, I'm going to have to take the ring, and I'm already really corrupt. But you have to have these discussions in front of the evil player, who again sits there cackling in front of or behind all of their cards, which I find a fascinating dynamic and very enjoyable. In fact, I prefer playing with Sauron to just playing the standard game. Number 7, the Sauron expansion for Lord of the Rings.
If I was making a list of all my top one versus all games, this would be the second last on the list.
Oh no!
The last one would actually be Pandemic with the traitor, Because both of those games, Pandemic and Lord of the Rings, so do not need the bad guy player. I cannot tell you how highly I dislike that there's a bad guy in Lord of the Rings. It was already hard enough. Why are we adding a guy in to control that who doesn't really have a lot of interesting decisions anyway? It is a mess. Big mess. Big miss.
Interesting.
Eric's wrong.
Oh, no.
But Eric hasn't even played my number 7, which most people would look at you with their eyes narrowed, Eric, and that's Fury of Dracula. It's had 3 editions, Eric.
I've managed to avoid them all, apparently.
Yeah. Fury of Dracula takes the Scotland Yard and brings it into full bloom where you're chasing after Dracula, except unlike Mr. X, where when you capture, when you land on him, he's out. Dracula will then start biting you and stuff. It's not so much fun. And so he's a powerful guy, and he's running around Europe, and you're using special abilities to find him and collecting weapons to go in there and get him. Oh, it's so thematic. The 3rd edition is easily the best of the different Fury of Draculas. Unfortunately, you better get it now before it gets out of print, because with the Games Workshop Fantasy Flight split, you're not going to see much more of that. But it is a very, very good game. And I'm one of the more mild fans of it. The people who love it. Yeah. A great game.
I like it. I think it's surprising that 2 Games Workshop games made a Dice Tower list. That's impressive. But I think the only thing with Fury of Dracula, I have seen it outstay its welcome. I think it's a little long. I'd like to see it.
Even the 3rd
faster.
edition?
Well, no, I haven't played. To be fair, I have not played 3rd edition yet, so I should try
the
that.
The 3rd edition really sped up a lot of things
That's
about
good.
it.
I should try that then. My number 7 is Catacombs, but it appears higher on someone else's list, so I'll wait for that.
Number 6.
Number 6 is another kids game. It's from Ravensburger, called Pyramid in English, or Flug der Mumie. I've discussed this a lot. It's got the vertical board with magnetic pieces, and the mummy players on one side and moving its mummy piece around the board, manipulating it on their side and moving a magnetic piece on the other side, and trying to catch the good players who are trying to tag different locations around the map, but the mummy player can't see where they are and just has to go based on their clues and where they were the last time they pinged an item. Neat sort of spooky but childish game. Good for Halloween, too. Pyramid, my number 6.
My number 6 is Whitehall Mystery. Now, a lot of people would say Letters from Whitechapel. That's the much more long version of hunting down Mr. Jack, but Whitehall Mystery just works better for me. It's faster, it's lighter, it's closer to Scotland Yard. Mr. Jack is just trying to get from one location to the other, and the detectives are trying to figure out where he is at any point on his journey trying to capture him. It might not even be Mr. Jack. It's just some bad guy, which I like because, Mr. Jack's pretty dark anyway. So I don't mind just being some criminal who people are going up against. I can play it with my kids and not have to explain what Mr. Jack is doing. Just some criminal that people are trying to catch. But it's a very nice, light game that I enjoy a lot. And even though I'm calling it a light game, the heavy, evil gamers in my game group, the people who like to play games forever and ever and get very serious about them, they also like this game. So they tell me it's not light at all. So I nod my head, I smile, I weep a tear for them later when they're not around. But I'm joking. They're all very, very fine gamers. I'm just never going to play this game with them because I play it in 45 minutes. They take 2 to 3 hours. So, but that's Whitehall Mystery, and hopefully, as we go to Russ's number 6, he won't spoil it.
Oh, did I? Well, this time I will not spoil my number 6. Then I will keep it a very clever secret and only tell you that it appears higher on someone else's list.
Number 5.
My number 5 appears elsewhere on someone else's list. So I'm just going to stand next to Russ and flick some discs until I get to talk about it.
Nice.
No, that's not nice. That's my number 5 is higher on Eric's list, and I'm not even doing a pun because they've all ruined it.
Excellent. Well, my number 5 appears on no one else's list, and that is Super Dungeon Explorer. I like this game. Now, I can't tell you yet why it appears higher than another game that I haven't mentioned yet on my list. Because long-time listeners of my show would probably be surprised to know Super Dungeon Explorer appears higher than this other game that I can't mention yet. But I will say that I think it's a nice, clean, faster playing game of dungeon crawling than other dungeon crawling games. It's very tight. I love the chibi components. The miniatures are fantastic. And I also like the video game tie-in, so the theme's really strong, and it plays fast, and it's a game that I was able to introduce to my kids at a very young age, and they really enjoyed it. So, Super Dungeon Explorer.
I own the base set of Super Dungeon Explorer. I assembled all the minis, and I still haven't gotten it to the table.
Now, why? I think your son would love it.
Yeah, maybe. It's amongst all of the other possibilities, it keeps falling below. Because probably I just never had a chance to try it, and so I don't know how much I'll like it. So we always go for the known properties. I don't know.
I like it, but I've liked it less as time has gone by. I think Simon does the chibi thing a little bit better. I was a little put off the first edition from having to hold the dragon together with 7 fingers to glue that thing together. Now they fixed that.
Right.
Their stuff is all one model now.
Right.
But it just doesn't seem like it has aged well. It's not that old, but and there's a lot of rules. You're always flipping cards over, trying to figure out where the rules are to do anything specific. I like it. It just feels like it needs a few more rules to kind of nail it into a more streamlined game.
That is fiddly. I'll give you that.
Number 4.
Number 4, again, is one that I mention a lot, and that's the 2000 edition of Buffy the Vampire Slayer from Hasbro. One player is playing the big bad, the monster, the big bad, the season monster, and the other players are playing the Scoobies, Buffy, Xander, Oz, Willow, and they're moving around. It's very Clue-like in its movement and board design, running around trying to pick up items and defeat bad guys. But it's fun to sort of cackle behind the screen of the evil player and try and beat down the Scoobies. It's Buffy, and it's number 4.
I was so surprised. I almost put that on Eric's list.
But where would it have been? That's the question.
I would have probably put it as number 1. I didn't know.
Yeah.
My number 4 is not surprisingly at all higher on someone else's list. Mm-hmm. I fear that I have fueled it even more by saying that.
Yes. My number 4 didn't appear on anyone else's list either. I was kind of surprised. Conan by Monolith. There's actually several different Conan games floating around out there nowadays. Conan's apparently very hot. But the Conan game by Monolith came out not too long ago. It's really a great. First of all, the models are fantastic, all pre-assembled. They look amazing, and what's really wonderful about it is how the Overlord player gets to control. So you're really locking in cards into the Overlord base station is this entire plastic sort of tray system, and you lock your cards in sequence of what you want to do, and as you then play cards, they move to the back of the list. So what ends up happening is you have a queue of sort of activities. And you have a queue that queue then indicates which models in your groups you can activate. So if you want to activate a particular group of models back to back, you can do it, but it costs you more points to do it than if you were to activate some models you haven't activated for a while. And it's based on this very simple, easy to understand queue system. I love it. It's a brilliant mechanic. It's very simple. It makes the Overlord's turn really some tough decisions. And every time I've played Conan, it has always resulted in a super, super heroic ending involving Conan doing something crazy. Like we had one where he actually literally ran across the bar, picked up a bottle, and threw it at a guy. And it's just like all kinds of crazy things can happen right out of the Conan movie. Captures the theme perfectly and really is a very satisfying Overlord and player mechanics. And that's Conan by Monolith.
I like this game, but I'm just saving this game. I'm gonna kind of delete it because Batman's coming, man.
Conan beats the Cape Crusader. I'm sorry.
What?
Conan trumps Batman. Oh yes, no, it's
that
not
doesn't.
even.
What?
Yes.
What? No.
Yes.
No. What?
Yes.
No.
Yes.
How?
Conan.
Name
one quote. Name one quote as Batman. As good as
Batman.
As good as.
Listen.
And hear the lamentations of their women. They just can't beat that quote.
All joking about the Batman versus Conan thing, which I'm right about anyway, but all joking about that aside, the fact is the reason I'd rather play Batman than Conan is because every character in Batman is interesting for me to play. And in Conan, he is easily by far the most interesting person to play.
He is. That's fair. That's fair. But Robin? Really? Robin? Come on.
Nightwing. Back off.
Number 3.
My number 3 is going to show up elsewhere. So I will put a rather nasty piece of machinery behind this easily openable door and wait for the rebels to approach.
He's played the first episode. All right, my number 3 is the only game that is on all 3 of our lists. And I'm glad because I talked to this game a lot to Eric before he finally played it, and that's Catacombs.
Yeah.
Now, this is second or third. I don't know what edition of Catacombs he's on now. There's a lot of out there. Catacombs is a flicking game about dungeons, like a Dungeons and Dragons. It's not Dungeons and Dragons, but it's that kind of style. Fantasy. Go into a dungeon and flick your way to victory. And it sounds like that shouldn't work. And yet it does so well. And each monster, like they have rules for the fire elementals, and they have rules for golems and trolls, and it just all comes together, and it feels tense. It's interesting. You don't have to be good at flicking to win, but you probably should be a little bit good at it. and it just, every game feels different. He has produced a metric ton of content for this game. It's one of my favorite games. I just love playing it.
Fantastic game, and a very unique take on the whole dungeon crawling, one versus many concept.
Yeah, it's one I'd like to play more of. I'd probably enjoy playing this with my kids. I've only played this with adults so far.
And my favorite mechanic is the one where you can put, when you cast fireballs or shoot arrows, you're putting a little mini disc next to the disc and then flicking that. I just think it's brilliant.
That's fun.
Yeah, it's a great idea. Or I like the fact that like the barbarian can just flick 4 times in a row.
Yes,
because he's enraged.
Right,
he's just running around.
That's awesome.
It's just a simple concept that just comes across well as a flicking game.
It just works.
It doesn't seem like it should work, but it does.
So my number 3 appears on no one's list, and that is Stronghold. Now I need to qualify this game. So the game Stronghold
is a 2-player game. Go ahead.
No. See, this is the mistake, and I've had words with Mr. Bonacore about this, because the original edition of Stronghold had a 3-player variant that I felt was the only way to play the game, in which 2 players are attacking the stronghold and 1 player is defending it. And the mechanics of the game are so brilliant, the way the 2 players that were attacking had to share their resources, and the defender worked. It gives you the realistic feeling of being overwhelmingly outnumbered because there's 2 brains against 1. This is still by far the original print of Stronghold, but the 3-player rules variant is my favorite 3-player game of all time. It is just a great way to play the game. I really, really enjoy it. I don't enjoy Stronghold 2-player because of the 3-player variant. The 4-player version really just takes too long. And I was very, very sad when I picked up the reprint of Stronghold. It did not have the 3-player variant in anymore. So I've poked Steven about this quite a bit. But I love the 3-player variant of Stronghold, and it is my favorite way to play a 3-player game.
Can you play the 3-player variant with the components of the new edition, or have they changed so much you can't even play it 3-player anymore?
You have to have some of the old components because of how the timing and thing works. You have to have a couple little bits, but you could make them yourself if you knew the old rules. You could bodge it together, but I still own I bought the reprint and I still own the original, and I play the original more than the reprint exactly because of what I described.
Interesting.
See, I was ready to argue with you, but then you said that Stephen was on the other side of the argument, so I feel like I should
That's right.
I should just be on your side just for purposes.
Right.
So yes, great choice. I can't believe Stronghold made such a stupid mistake. I really don't believe that.
You should.
Number 2.
My number 2 is Tragedy Looper, a game where the good players are trying to figure out what's going on in this particular scenario, and the primary goal, in addition to not getting caught, not having the good guys defeat you, the evil player is trying to obfuscate as much as possible. Try and mislead the good players into what exactly is going on, what would trigger certain things to happen, and that is an interesting challenge that is unlike just about any other game you could play as an overlord. It's much more about mystery and misdirection than many of maybe some of these hide and seek games, but it's more than that. It's really misleading causes and effects in Tragedy Looper, which is a cool challenge. It's my number 2, Tragedy Looper.
Ah, that's interesting. I didn't think that would be so high on your list.
I need to play it more, though.
My number 2 is Russ's number 6. And it is a game that is being beat out all the time by other, there's so many dungeon crawls out now, but Descent is still the king of the fantasy dungeon crawl. It's just an amazingly fun game. The first edition was fun, but I grew tired of it because it was You went from 0 to hero. It was long, and then they added an expansion for it that changed everything.
That's right.
That added a campaign, and it like blew my mind that you could save a board game.
Yeah.
I never seen that before. Mm-hmm. And then in the second edition, they said, you know what, we're going to keep doing that, but just make that the base game itself and make these campaigns more interesting because they weren't. And the original Descent, after a while, was just go and kill everything you saw. Now there was other things. And in the second edition, I felt as the Overlord, and this is important to me, I didn't have to pull my punches all the time.
Right.
And I also had...
Go ahead, sorry.
I was going to say, I also had so many options that the Overlord in Descent has as much different things than lieutenants and monsters. It's ridiculous the amount of things you can do.
Yeah, I have so many hours in Descent second edition and Sea of Blood and the other campaigns. I love Descent, but it only came in 6th this time because it's been better mechanics have been introduced, and there are some mechanical flaws in Descent, especially still near the end game. And there's also some, even in second edition, there's some ways that the players I think can still manipulate the game a little bit that are, I don't know if they're unintended, but it just feels a little weird. And I think they've been fixed in other games since then. I would love to see them take a lot of the things they've learned in Fantasy Flight's learned from newer games and kind of go back and, if not a third edition, just kind of tweak Descent to be a little stronger.
Well, let me ask you this, Russ. Do you have an example of one of these games you think that does it better than Descent?
Well, let's go on to my number 2. My number 2 is Imperial Assault, which which appeared earlier, number 3 on Eric's list, and I was kind of surprised it didn't appear on Tom's list. And
well, real quick, I mean, I know you're going to brag about it. The main reason it doesn't appear on my list is because I almost never play it the 1 versus all method. I play it the 1 versus 1 method.
Oh, you play
the tactical battles. I really got into that. That was more fun, and that's kind of what I mostly have done with it.
So it's kind of like you're the opposite of me with Stronghold, where I only play Stronghold 3-player. You only play Imperial Assault 2-player. So I like.
Well, no, but mine's in the rules. I'm just saying.
Mine's in the rules of the original. So anyway, so Imperial Assault. What I like about it, the biggest mechanic they fixed. There's a bunch of little things that they made better, of course, but the biggest mechanic they fixed is the integrated turn. So this idea that instead of the Overlord moving all the monsters and then the heroes moving all the heroes, now a hero activates and the Overlord picks a monster group, and then the hero activates and the Overlord picks a monster group. Makes the game much more interesting. It's harder for the heroes to anticipate what else is going to happen. The heroes have a tougher time choosing their activation order. Really makes the game more compelling. So I really enjoy what they did with that. Of course, the Star Wars theme is amazing. It does not have the depth and detail of Descent, but it is fantastic. And it's to the point where we've considered trying some rules hacks with Descent 2nd Edition and see if we can tweak it to allow the integrated turn, because I really feel like the integrated turn is the magic that makes Imperial Assault just that much better than Descent.
I think I agree. I sort of lumped Imperial Assault and Descent together in putting my list. I haven't played either a tremendous amount, so they're still, the differences don't really stand out to me, but I did feel like Imperial Assault was more smooth. And I also appreciate the theme more than a dungeon crawl, fantasy dungeon crawl. So that's why it's on my list and Descent is not.
Okay, well, you guys are both right. It's a great game. The campaign, I just can only play so many campaign games, so I've chosen.
Right.
I chose when it came down to it to play Descent and over Imperial Assault, and then play him. But I still get to shoot Darth Vader with Luke Skywalker and stuff in the campaign. I mean, in the tactical game.
Sure.
And finally, number 1.
Last for me was Tom's number 5. That's Spectre Ops, the game of hide and seek in the Raxon Pharmaceuticals facility, where you've got 4 hunters with special abilities, or a team of hunters with special abilities, trying to track down one agent who's trying to tag locations on the board and get out before being knocked out. The special powers, special equipment, all come together really well. The tension, the production of this game is stellar. I love being the mouse in the cat and mouse game of Spectre Ops. My number 1.
Nice. Yeah, everything Eric says is absolutely true. Really enjoy this. I like it's Scotland Yard in the modern era. So that's kind of fun for me. I'm really kind of looking forward to the new standalone expansion / game coming for it. I don't know what different things they're adding, but I know they're compatible. That's kind of cool. I'm still hoping that they will eventually have app integration completely with this game, where one person will be able to hide completely, by using an app and stuff.
They're working on an app, right? I mean, I've seen prototypes of it.
Wait, they are. I just haven't seen the full thing.
Okay, it's pretty.
My number one is a game that came out pretty much the same time Conan did, and that's why Conan's a little bit lower, actually, for me, because I really like Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. The board game from IDW. I did not expect great things from this game, honestly. I just thought it's another slapped-on license, but it did have Kevin Wilson, and I was like, all right, well, he did a good job with Descent. And this game is so much fun because for the good guys, the Turtles, and once you get some expansions, you can, throw in some of their other people. The teamwork aspect is so strong. You roll some dice. Those are the dice you use. But the die on your extreme left or your extreme right is also used by the person sitting next to you. It's a great concept. It's strong themes, little missions. They're not very long. There's a nice card activation deck. The Overlord gets to make some good, strong decisions. The miniatures are great. I just love the whole product. I really, really like Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, the board game.
I so want to play this game, and I'm a huge Ninja Turtle fan, and I've heard people rave about it. And the problem is, none of my friends, none of them are Turtles fans. So they'll say, I won't play it. I'm like, but it's solid rules. No, I don't care.
Sir, you have children.
I do, but okay. There's another whole story about that. I tried to get my daughter into Ninja Turtles when she was very young, and she has a turtle. She has a pet turtle she's had since she was 10. And so I figured, well, she likes turtles. And she looked at me, deadpan, straight in the eye, and she said, Dad, turtles don't fight crime. And that's been her line ever since. And I cannot get her to watch the show, play a game, anything with Ninja Turtles is right out. So
I'm so sorry.
I have no rebuttal for that. I have no rebuttal.
That's a great story, though.
So I want to try it though, Tom. So maybe next time we're at a convention together, you can show me Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. My number one did appear earlier on Tom's list in his number 4 slot, and that is my absolute favorite one of these games, and it is Level 7 Omega Protocol. Now, this game, for those who might not be familiar with it, because it's not hugely popular or well-known, it's actually by Privateer Press, one of their few board games that is actually worth playing. And I say that with love because I'm a huge Privateer Press War Machine fan. But what's great about Level 7 Omega Protocol, not the components necessarily, they're okay, which you might expect to be strong coming from a miniature gaming company. They're not. The miniatures are average. The actual cardboard components are a little fiddly, a little wobbly, not quite as nice as I'd like to see them. What makes this game work are the mechanics. The mechanics are super solid. The fluff here is you're a team of super powerful, super high-tech sort of Marines going into Area 51 or something equivalent full that the aliens have escaped and have taken our facility. You got to go in and neutralize them, basically. And there's this team of strike forces going in there, and the Overlord is playing all the different kinds of aliens. What really makes the game work is this sort of puzzle. Instead of having a hand of cards like you do in Descent to play a superpower or to make an Overlord special move, you have these puzzle pieces that are laid out on the board. And as the humans do things, as the players do things, they generate a resource called stress, right? Or adrenaline. And the aliens feed off the humans' adrenaline. So the more that the heroes do each turn, the more adrenaline tokens you give to the Overlord, and that empowers the Overlord to do more of his special powers. For example, to spawn guys, he needs to use adrenaline to get the things on the board. And then when he spends the adrenaline, he puts it into these little puzzle pieces, like sort of bins on the table in front of him, and they slowly drain down again. So there's 2 mechanics you have to worry about. One, you need to get enough adrenaline from the heroes to be able to do things, but then when you activate a power, to activate it again costs you more adrenaline unless all the existing adrenaline is drained out. So you have to kind of burn some time there as well. It's a brilliant mechanic that really forces the players, the heroes, to think about every single move they make. And so unlike Descent, where one hero races across the board, kills 15 monsters, activates again, picks up a potion, drinks, does something else, if you did all that in a game like Level 7, you'd be giving the Overlord just tons and tons of money. And by the way, I think this is the reason I like Stronghold so much too, because it's a similar mechanic where you're giving time to the other side. So really just a brilliant mechanic. Really, really like it. And my crew that plays this game with me, I have the same crew of people that play a lot of these games with me. We all like the campaign games. And they, too, it's not their favorite theme of the genre, but just the way the mechanics work makes it the number one game for me.
You know, this is a game that I almost skipped because I didn't like Level 7 Escape at all. I disliked it.
Yep.
And I heard Russ and Craig talking about this, and Russ was like, this is basically XCOM, the board game. And I was like, what? And then I played it, and lo and behold, it was. And it's so fun being that Overlord and laying traps in different places, and you make the people feel claustrophobic because they think they're doing fine, and suddenly the vents open and a bunch of aliens come out.
Yeah.
And you know what else I like about it? It's not a dungeon crawl.
Right.
The Marines that go in don't really level up. They find a few odds and ends, health packs and stuff, but they're not finding bigger guns on level 2 and bigger guns on level 3. No, they're just going in trying to survive. They're going in loaded for bear. It's like they're bringing their best against your best. Who's going to win? Right,
and if you die, it's over. Like, if you get wiped out on a level, it's not like you restart. I mean, technically the campaign ends. The only way for the Overlord to win is to kill you. And it's just, I don't know, it's a wonderful game. If you've not seen it or tried it, it's another one of those games, too, that I don't think sells super well, so you probably can find it at a pretty good price.
There you go. That's Russ's motif today.
It is. Value shopping, Tom. Quality for a budget.
All right, let's see what the People's Choice said. Well, number 10, they said Shadows over Camelot, so they must agree with you.
Uh-huh.
Number 9, Descent. Number 8, Dead of Winter. I would actually...
Does that count?
Well, if Shadows over Camelot counts, Dead of Winter counts.
No, not necessarily, because, Eric, there's a really good chance there's no traitor in Dead of Winter.
I guess.
And everyone is acting suspicious and hurtful, and are you even on the same team? I don't know. Number 7, Not Alone. Surprising. Number 6, Scotland Yard. Number 5, Star Wars Imperial Assault. Number 4, Betrayal at House on the Hill. Number 3, Letters from Whitechapel. Number 2, Fury of Dracula. And number 1, Spectre Ops.
Yeah, we did pretty good. We got a lot of matches there, guys.
Yeah,
that's pretty good.
Mucho points.
It's not a genre that's huge, right?
Yeah.
There's a lot of games in it, but we're starting to see more, right? We're seeing, although interesting enough, almost every dungeon crawl that has come out this year
co-op now.
Are co-op, and I actually like having the Overlord make those decisions.
Me too. I'm booing that. And you know what, though, Tom? I've not played Gloomhaven yet, and based on your passion for it, I'm going to try it. I skipped it because it was co-op. Right.
Yeah, but I look at it, and I don't know if I look at it in a different way. I'm sitting there playing it. I almost feel like I'm playing a computer game. I'm just like gearing up, and I'm like, it's all about tactics and things and how you go in and defeat a level and what are you going to do. And so I feel that a little bit differently. But I mean, Descent still is like, I'm gonna be the bad guy. I want to be the bad guy and because. What I learned, I don't run RPGs much anymore, but when I ran an RPG, my goal was for everyone at the table to have an amazingly fun time. Even if it's at my expense, I don't care. I never understood the DMs who needed to kill their people or whatever.
Right.
I just want them to have a fantastic time, and playing these games lets you do that. It lets you let the players have these amazing moments. You can still try to get them a little bit, but the ultimate goal should be that the all in the Allverse one should have a great time.
Sounds good.
Yeah.
That's my words of wisdom to end the episode. Russ, thanks so much for coming on our show. If you notice, it's slightly shorter than yours.
It is slightly short. That would not be hard. Thank you so much for having me, Tom and Eric. It's always a pleasure to chat with you and your listeners. Really appreciate the opportunity.
Yep, and you can listen to Rusty and Craig have the third guest. They kind of did that first.
They did. The third chair, yes. But if you can call it the third chair, but I need $10 every time you do in licensing fees. So, just be aware.
Yeah, but you have Banneker on way too much on your show. I actually downloaded your show the other day, and I was like, let's listen to it. I saw it was Banneker, and I said, well, what else you got?
Well, yeah.
So I went and looked for another episode. So you lost a download there.
All right. Fair. I'll remind Steven next time he's begging to be on the show.
All right. Anyway, folks, thanks so much for listening to our show. We really appreciate it. And go check out D6 Generation when you get a chance. But we hope to see you guys next time. Our Essen Preview show. Is that next, Eric? It's next. I think. That's exciting.
Yes.
What Eric's about to tell you. Until next time, I'm Tom Vassell.
I'm Eric Summerer.
Oh, sorry. I'm Russ Wakelin. Bye.
And you've been listening to The Dice Tower.
Thanks for listening. Promotional consideration has been provided by game publishers in the form of review copies of games. This episode, number 525, was recorded on October 5th, 2017. Coming up next week, Mandy and Suzanne join Tom and me for an epic 4-chair Essen preview show. Support for this podcast comes from listeners like you. Thank you for your continued support. And speaking of support, the Jack Vassell Memorial Fund is dedicated to providing support to members of the board gaming community in their hour of need. Find out more about the fund's mission and how you can help at jackvassell.org. The Dice Tower is produced by Tom, Mandy, Suzanne, and Eric, with production assistance from Itai Perez, Derek Porter, and Rob Siri. Our theme was composed by Timothy Pinkham. The story of what happened when the captain of the Nautilus hit his thumb with a hammer provided by Nemo Swore. And hosting is provided by Cool Stuff Inc., where you can find great games at great prices at coolstuffinc.com. We love feedback. Visit the Dice Tower Guild at BoardGameGeek.com. Email us at Dicetower@gmail.com or follow us on Facebook. And of course, you can find more from the Dice Tower Network, including the Out of Game podcast, 20 Minutes of Filler, the Snakes Cast, the D6 Generation, the Family Gamers, Blue Peg, Pink Peg, the Portal Gaming podcast, and Board Game Breakfast at Dicetowernetwork.com. Until next time, from all the gang at the Dice Tower, have fun gaming. All right, so based on our discussion here, how's this for a game concept? One versus many. There are two players who are both competing to be the best overlord, the worst at dealing with the mob, and then the mob is just trying to survive.
I think there was a variant in Descent that did that, right? Wasn't there dueling overlords in Descent once with
really
players?
I don't remember that
in the book.
But they're definitely coming out with a game that's many versus one, where there's like multiple overlords and one person's going through a dungeon. I think it's called Alone.
Oh. Ooh. So
that was made for you, Eric.
Okay. I'm looking forward to it.